This is Frank Abbruzzino with the Uncensored Report. And today I want to talk a little bit about soft coups and something that we were experiencing prior to the election and we continue to experience in the United States. And to give you the gist of it, I wanted to go back and give you basically where I'm coming from, okay? So we got a silent coup in the United States, right? And is it happening? Was there a soft regime change or attempt to? And does it continue today? And a lot of this comes from this guy, Steve Pesnick, who majored in psychological warfare. He was in the CIA and all that good stuff. Really talented individual, okay? He worked under Henry Kissinger as a Department Assistant Secretary. Very intelligent, very respected out there in the industry. He put out a video and he talked about, this was prior to the election, and I remember watching, he talked about the role the American government played in manipulating Soviet culture and leadership to bring about a Soviet coup, and that essentially the intelligence agencies of America were doing this now to undermine the soft coup that was going on via the Democratic Party. And they did these comparisons of these, these essentially bloodless regime changes, which are relevant in the context of U.S. politics today. And these basically are effective soft strategies. They're tools that are being used, that we use to destabilize the USSR. And we used different elements. He basically covered five. He talked about religion, how it was used externally to bring about an internal rise within the Russian Orthodox religion to undermine the atheist regime that was working out of the Kremlin during the USSR Cold War days under communism. Another tactic that the U.S. demonstrated to stop military leaders was pretty effective. It was modern U.S. weaponry against the Soviet tanks, and would they be able to take us on as a military force with our weapon system? And what this did, it got the Soviet leaders nervous, and they couldn't grasp the dominance of our power, so they went out there and it effectively neutralized the Soviet military without us ever having to engage in any type of warfare with them, which would have been detrimental to both countries. Another element that Steve brought up is creating economic hardship. And we did this with the Soviet Union. And it was something that many of us can't comprehend. You know, Reagan went out and he was funding the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. And it's back then, Steve was saying, although we made it look like this was one hellacious program that was detrimental in terms of warfare, that was basically smoke and mirrors. And the Soviets responded by overspending and just building up their defense programs. And it led to that cold arms race, which destabilized the financial system over in the Soviet Union. The fourth element out there that they said they tend to utilize was the cultural one. And this was creating these fissure units between the younger and older generations in the Soviet Union. Lastly, the fifth element that he covered in this video, and I'll put a link of the video up when I do my thing, was basically the process of negotiations that took place between the Soviet Politburo and our intelligence agencies on the deconstruction of the communist elements within the Soviet Union. And that's the psychological warfare aspect of it all. And he basically put in, if you put in context, is that what's occurring today in the United States? And do we see hints of the same elements in play? There's been revelations out there that were made public by WikiLeaks, which impacted the results of the 2016 elections. Some may say they didn't, but they definitely did. The timing of the releases and the how partisan they were in nature of the content, it specifically targeted the Democratic campaign. And there was a clear bias there, which opened speculation out there that possibly Trump was working hand in hand with Julian Assange and the Russian community and American intelligence. And lo and behold, a lot of people are saying it wasn't really them. The Democrats were out there and they kept blaming the Russians, although they didn't have any specific evidence. The major media went along with it saying, oh yeah, it's Russia. Again, no specific evidence. But a lot of people out there, including this Steve guy, who's really in touch and in tune with the intelligence agencies out there, indicated that was NSA. And they were the source of the leaks. that it was our United States intelligence community that worked covertly to ensure that Clinton would not win. And after the election, the manipulation of the politics continues as protests are organized out there. You have front groups that are funding groups like BLM and the Communist Party, and a lot of them groups ran by George Soros's, who is dumping a ton of his billions into these social engineered programs that are out there. And so, is our nation being manipulated? I think we are. We're being manipulated by off-screen actors on both sides of the stage. And that brings the question, is there an attempt for a soft coup, which Steve had presented prior to the election? Many of the elements are there for regime change. And if you look at them, and this is where you take that context and compare it to what happened in Russia. Look at religion. It's clearly weaponized right now. You got Islam is being used as by the globalists as an invincible enemy that's out there. There's signs of a new arms race with Russia and China. New military capabilities and assertiveness, I can't speak, on the China and Russian side are scaring the United States. So we got Trump coming in saying, I'm going to throw tons of money into our military. Economic warfare. We got the banking and financial crises that are out there that have been created by the central banks and the Federal Reserve, which is owned by multinational banking conglomerates. There's the culture war out there. You got U.S. In the United States with the millennials out there and the so-called justice warriors, which I put up stories every day about, attempting to disrupt civil discourse out there. Essentially advocating the end of free speech. We see it on social media constantly. I have 275,000 fan page shut down over something like this. And we see it in the election, in the recent events. Some type of negotiations taking place behind the scenes in America by several factions are controlling the destiny and the direction that we're going in this, what people believe to be a silent coup. And we may, all of us, all Americans may be at the mercy of these people that are maneuvering to drastically alter our social, our cultural, and our political environment in the United States. And however you look at it, unfortunately, these maneuvers would only lead to greater system controls, authoritarianism. Your freedoms, if you look, are slowly disappearing under the guise of your being for your safety. Think about it. Unless unless we wake up to the politics that are taking place here and refuse to allow ourselves to become the victims to this weaponization of religion, social justice, and everything out there, until we stop them from treating us as pawns to their oligarchy, it will never end. And so we need to stand up and put an end to this. So what say you? Is this a soft coup? And I'm telling you, many, like I said, many in the intelligence field believe it was a soft coup, and that's why they acted, releasing a lot of the information to WikiLeaks. Think about it. This has been Frankie Abbruzzino with the Uncensored Report.